How can just 11 people manage a property larger than Belgium? How does a place endure years without rain only to flood like an inland sea? And how did this remote outback station become the largest cattle station on Earth? From wild camels to helicopters, from drought to renewal, this is Anna Creek Station, where the outback demands resilience and only the toughest thrive. Before we hit the red dirt, subscribe to Spinifex Stations, your window into outback life. The story of Anna Creek Station begins in the mid-19th century when European settlers and explorers were pushing into South Australia's arid interior. The creek that gave the station its name, Anna Creek, was first charted in 1858 by explorer Colonel William Warburton, who named it after a daughter of pastoralist John Chambers. A few years later, in 1863, a group of optimistic pastoralists established Anna Creek Station as a sheep station. The original founders were Julius Jeffreys, John Warren and William Bakewell, who purchased a pastoral lease at a place called Strangways Springs in January 1863. At the time, sheep were the preferred livestock for many settlers, and the new station initially ran about 7,300 sheep for wool and meat. However, the early years were anything but easy. The mid-1860s brought an era known as the Great Drought Years, 1864 to 1866, when rain virtually failed across the outback. Waterholes dried up and pasture withered. The young Anna Creek operation struggled to keep its stock alive. On top of drought, the flock suffered constant attacks by dingoes, Australia's wild dogs. Sheep proved too vulnerable in this unforgiving land. Dingoes would prey on them, and the arid grazing land could scarcely support them during drought. The founders faced a tough decision: adapt or give up. Adapt they did. Within a few years, Anna Creek Station made a pivotal switch from sheep to cattle to survive. Cattle were hardier in dry conditions and far less prone to dingo predation than sheep. This decision set the course for Anna Creek's future. Cattle grazing on a grand scale would become the station's focus and legacy. Yet another big change was on the horizon in those early days. In 1872, the station's homestead was relocated from Strangways Springs to its present site along Anna Creek. What prompted a move after a decade? One factor was the development of the overland telegraph line in 1872, which ran through this region. Strangways Springs became the site of a telegraph repeater station, and pastoral activities gradually shifted away over the next few years. By 1876, the name Anna Creek Station was firmly attached to the new homestead location along the creek itself, and the original site at Strangways was largely handed over to the telegraph camp. In short, the coming of communications technology in the outback literally moved the station's heart. Today, the ruins of the old Strangways telegraph station and the later outpost at the Peak can still be seen on Anna Creek Station, preserved as heritage sites, silent reminders of the era when telegraph wires were the lifeline to the outside world. After the relocation, Anna Creek Station gradually found its footing as a cattle station. The late 19th century saw a series of capable managers and owners overseeing the property. John Hogarth was the station's manager from the 1870s until 1893, followed by his younger brother Thomas Hogarth, who managed it up to 1913. Under their stewardship, the station ran cattle across its vast rangeland and weathered the typical boom and bust cycles of outback life, from occasional good seasons when cattle thrived to bad years when water was scarce. The Hogarths were succeeded briefly by George Warren, who managed the station for about a year, and then by his younger brother Francis Warren, who managed Anna Creek until 1918. Notably, Francis Warren was also a part owner. He had inherited a share in the station, and unusually for the time, he formed close ties with the local Aboriginal people, the Erebuna. In fact, Frances Warren married an Arabuna woman and learned much about the land from her family, a cross-cultural partnership that was quite ahead of its time. This respect for Aboriginal knowledge helped the station adapt to the country's challenges, like understanding water sources and maintaining vital equipment, for example, fixing a broken windmill pump with guidance from an Aboriginal stockman, as recorded in old station journals. By the turn of the 20th century, Anna Creek Station had established itself as a going concern, but it was still a remote and demanding place to live. The nearest town for supplies was hundreds of kilometres away. In those days, transport was by horse or camel, and later by bullock dray, slow journeys that could take weeks. Stockmen lived at the station in significant numbers because managing cattle without modern vehicles was incredibly labour-intensive. A whole team of rangy bushmen, cooks, blacksmiths, and sometimes their families formed a little community at the Anna Creek homestead. They lived in basic conditions, think wood and stone huts or tin sheds, water from wells, no electricity or refrigeration until mid-20th century. Communications were limited to handwritten letters that took ages to arrive, or telegrams sent from the nearby telegraph station if there was an urgent message. One major development that improved life was the coming of the Great Northern Railway, popularly known as the Garn. By the 1880s, the railway had reached Oodnadatta, northwest of Anna Creek, and by 1891, regular trains ran to that railhead. For Anna Creek and other stations in the region, this was a lifeline. Instead of droving cattle all the way to market in Adelaide, a gruelling trek of over 700 kilometres, stockmen could now overland the herds to Oodnadatta and load them on trains, dramatically cutting travel time and stock losses. The Garn train also brought essential supplies and mail. During rare floods when roads became impassable, the train was often the only link that kept the station provisioned. The old rail line, now the route of the Oodnadatta track, had sidings and bore water tanks along the way, some of which still bear the names of bygone sidings. The railway era marked a turning point, knitting the outback stations a little closer to the rest of Australia. A significant chapter in Anna Creek's history began in 1918 when the original owners sold the station. That year, Anna Creek was purchased by new partners, Malcolm Reed and Leslie Taylor. Not long after, the station caught the eye of the most famous pastoralist of the day, Sir Sidney Kidman. Kidman was known as the Cattle King, an entrepreneur who built an empire of cattle stations across Australia, strategically spread so that he could move his herds in search of feed and water during droughts. In 1935, Anna Creek became part of S. Kidman and Co. By acquiring Anna Creek, Kidman added to his holdings in the region. He already owned neighbouring stations like Stewart's Creek and the Peak, creating an enormous contiguous pastoral block. Under Kidman's ownership, Anna Creek Station became the headquarters of this northern South Australia block of properties. Day-to-day management was entrusted to experienced station families, notably the McLean and Nunn families, whose association with Anna Creek ran for decades. R.E. Dick Nunn, for example, was a legendary manager who spent much of his life on Anna Creek and became synonymous with the station's operations. He's even commemorated by a cairn on the property. These families treated the station almost as their dynasty. Knowledge, skills and responsibility were passed from one generation to the next, providing continuity through the 20th century. The Kidman era also saw technological progress reach the outback. Many bores were drilled to tap the Great Artesian Basin under the property, providing reliable water points for cattle in areas that previously had none. Iconic windmills sprang up across the station, pumping water from deep underground into tanks or bore drains for livestock. Those metal windmills became a familiar sight spinning in the hot desert wind. They literally enabled cattle to spread across parts of the station that used to be too dry, a game changer for productivity. Of course, if a windmill broke down, the results could be dire. One old story tells of an Aboriginal stockman riding dozens of kilometres to alert the manager that a remote bull's windmill had failed, leaving sheep without water. Quick fixes were, and still are, critical when your water supply is man-made. By mid-century, Anna Creek was running as a vast, efficient cattle domain. It's worth noting that even at its peak, the stocking rate was very low compared to smaller farms in fertile areas. In good seasons, the station might carry around 16,000 cattle, which over an area of 20,000 plus square kilometres works out to only one animal per 1 or 2 square kilometres. This extensive style of grazing is the only way to raise livestock in such an arid environment. The land simply cannot support dense herds. The cattle raised here, mostly Santa Gertrudis breed, a hardy, red Bos Indicus influenced breed, are well suited to the heat and sparse feed, thriving where European breeds would struggle. Under Kidman's stewardship, and thanks to managers like the McLens and Nuns, Anna Creek Station survived through the ups and downs of seasons, the economic swings, and even the disruptions of World War II, when beef was in high demand but rural labour was scarcer. The station and its people became an outback institution, known for stoicism, hard work, and a touch of bush ingenuity. For much of its history, daily life and work on Anna Creek Station revolved around the horse. Horses were absolutely essential in the era before motor vehicles. Stockmen rode out at dawn on horseback to muster, round up cattle scattered over vast paddocks. They used stock whips and keen bush skills to manage the herd. A good stock horse was worth its weight in gold. Strong, sure-footed, able to handle heat and distance. The station bred and trained its own horses, and many a young jackaroo, trainee ranch hand, earned their stripes breaking brumbies or doing long musters with only horse and camel transport. Yes, camels were part of the picture too in early days. Afghan cameleers had introduced camels to outback Australia, and stations like Anna Creek sometimes employed camel teams for carrying heavy loads of wool, fence posts and provisions across country where there were no roads. Camels didn't replace horses for stock work, but they were the ships of the desert for hauling cargo until engines arrived. The image of the outback stockman, broad-brimmed hat, riding a horse across a sun-scorched plain with a pack of cattle dogs trailing, was reality here for about a century. But from the late 20th century onward, technology rapidly changed station work. Motor vehicles arrived, first rugged utility trucks or utes, and then motorbikes. By the 1980s and 1990s, two-wheeled and four-wheeled motorbikes, quad bikes, had become common tools for mustering on many stations, including Anna Creek. Helicopters and light planes also made an appearance. Instead of spending days scouring remote corners of a paddock for cattle, a pilot could spot the herd from the air in a fraction of the time. Over the past few decades, Anna Creek stockmen have increasingly used motorbikes to chase cattle, with a plane or chopper circling overhead to guide the stragglers. It's an impressive sight, the roar of a dirt bike and the buzz of a low-flying mustering plane, kicking up dust where once there was only hoof beat and hoof drag. Do horses still have a role? Absolutely. Horses are still used, especially in the yards or corrals when sorting and working with cattle, or in terrains where bikes can't go. They're also part of station culture and skill. Many of the crew take pride in their horsemanship. But by and large, the station's mustering operations today run on petrol and aviation fuel rather than hay. As one modern station hand quipped, "These days, our cowboys are more likely to wear out a motorbike seat than a saddle." Horses to horsepower. It's a prime example of how even the most traditional outback practices have evolved with the times. What is it like living on a property the size of a small nation in the middle of nowhere? Isolated barely begins to describe it. The Anna Creek homestead, where the station manager and some staff reside, is hours of driving from the nearest town. In the early days, homestead life meant kerosene lamps for light, meat houses and coolers to preserve food, and making do with what you had. A trip to town for supplies might happen once or twice a year. For months on end, the station community had to be entirely self-sufficient. They grew vegetables in a small garden, if water allowed, kept chickens for eggs, maybe goats for milk. Mail day was a big event. Letters were treasured links to family and friends far away. Today, life on Anna Creek Station is still remote, but modern amenities have made it much more comfortable. The homestead has electricity, these days likely from generators or solar panels with battery storage. There's refrigeration, air conditioning, a lifesaver in the summer when temperatures soar above 45 degrees C, and satellite communications. In fact, even at this isolated homestead, residents can watch television via satellite and connect to the internet. Phone calls are often via satellite phone or internet-based services now, replacing the old high-frequency radio networks. The station is so large that it actually surrounds the tiny settlement of William Creek, which has a permanent population of only about 6 or 10 people and is basically a pub, a campground and an airstrip. William Creek's pub is famous for being one of the most remote pubs in Australia. It doubles as a social hub for the sparse population in the area, station folk, passing tourists and the odd adventurer. A weekly highlight is the Coober PD one-day mail run, which delivers mail to outback residents twice a week, including Anna Creek Station. The mail truck can also bring fresh bread, spare parts or any special orders from town, making it a crucial supply line even in the 21st century. Education and medical services in such isolation have long been handled in uniquely Australian ways. In the past, many station kids did School of the Air, receiving lessons by radio broadcast and post, or they corresponded by mail for schoolwork. Nowadays it might be done via satellite internet, essentially homeschooling with guidance from distant teachers. Some families still send their children to boarding school once they reach secondary age, but primary education can be handled from the station. Healthcare is provided by the Royal Flying Doctors Service, RFDS. Anna Creek, like most big stations, has a basic airstrip near the homestead, so the Flying Doctors' small planes can land in emergencies. In non-emergencies, the RFDS also runs periodic clinic flights or telehealth consultations for remote areas. Everyone on the station is trained in first aid, and there's a medical chest with supplies that an RFDS doctor can instruct someone to use via radio or phone. The attitude is very much hope for the best, but prepare for the worst when it comes to accidents or illness in the outback. Social life on the station is tight-knit, but also far-flung. With only a handful of people on site, everyone knows each other and teamwork is part of daily existence. A station cook prepares communal meals for the staff most days, and come evening there's often a get-together for dinner at the main kitchen, a chance to chat and wind down after a long day's work. On special occasions, or just when the workload allows, people might drive over from neighbouring stations, which could be 100 kilometres away or more, for a barbecue, a cricket match on a makeshift pitch, or a weekend boar opening party or rodeo. These gatherings are real oases of human contact in an isolated life. Annual events like the Birdsville races or the Maree picnic races historically drew station folk from all over the region. Some would close up shop for a week and make the long trip to these bush carnivals for a taste of festivity and company. To run a station like Anna Creek smoothly, every member of the team wears multiple hats. The station manager, currently Matthew Williams of the family that owns the place, oversees overall operations from cattle management to finance. Then there's a handful of station hands, stockmen and stockwomen, who do the mustering, fence repairs, yard work and general cattle work. There's usually a plant operator or mechanic who keeps generators, vehicles, graders and other machinery running. And there's typically a cook or housekeeper who not only makes meals, but also orders stores and runs the homestead household. At full strength, Anna Creek might employ around 8 station hands, a plant operator, a cook, plus the manager, roughly 10 to 12 people in total. During peak work times, like big musters or when trucking out cattle, they might bring in a few extra casual workers or contractors. By any measure, it's a tiny workforce to manage a property of this magnitude. The secret lies in efficiency, technology, and hard-earned expertise.
Managing thousands of cattle across millions of acres requires a mix of time-tested know-how and modern tech. A lot of the work still follows natural cycles and rhythms. Generally, Anna Creek is operated as a breeding and fattening property. This means they maintain breeding cows that calve on the station, raise the calves to weaners, then grow them out until they're ready for sale or transfer. In the greener seasons, there's plenty of natural feed and the cattle grow well. In dry times, the growth slows, and the station must make decisions about destocking or supplementary feeding, though on such a large scale, feeding hay or grain is usually impractical. Moving cattle elsewhere or selling some off is more common. A year on the station might look like this. During the cooler months, winter into spring, large-scale mustering is done. Using motorbikes, utes, sometimes horses and aerial support, the station hands will muster paddock by paddock, bringing cattle into the yards. There they draft and sort the cattle, separating out those to be trucked off to market, those to keep for breeding, weaners that need branding, etc. It's hard, dusty work. Cattle yard work involves wrestling large animals, tagging ears, giving necessary inoculations, and branding young stock. The crew often works from sunup to sundown when a big muster is on, with the homestead sending sandwiches and a big lunch spread out to the yards to keep everyone going. After the drafting and processing, road trains, huge multi-trailer trucks, come in to load the market cattle for transport to sale or to another finishing property. This process happens several times a year in cycles across different parts of the station. One of the biggest challenges is simply finding the cattle in such a huge landscape. In the olden days, stockmen could spend days or weeks riding out and camp out overnight, looking for mobs of cattle scattered across distant paddocks. Now, as mentioned, aerial mustering makes this far more efficient. A small plane or chopper flies overhead to spot cattle from above. Dark cattle stand out against pale soil, and movement is easier to detect in the wide open land. The pilot can radio the stockman on the ground, directing them to the cattle. Often the plane will swoop low and push cattle in the desired direction as well. It's a skilled job, both for the pilot and the riders, to ensure cattle aren't overstressed, split up, or lost in rough terrain like thick scrub or gullies. But the result is a much smaller workforce can cover an area that previously would have required many more people on horseback. For instance, today just 8 stock hands with some machines can do what maybe 50 riders did a century ago. Technology doesn't stop at mustering. Anna Creek's current owners, the Williams family, have brought in modern innovations to help manage the station's far-flung infrastructure. Water points are a prime example. There are dozens of bores, tanks and troughs across the property providing drinking water for cattle. In the past, a station hand had to ride or drive to each one regularly, often weekly, to check that the windmill or pump was working and that there was water in the tank or dam. If something broke, it might be down for days before discovery, potentially leaving cattle in that area without water. Nowadays, many of these water systems are outfitted with remote sensors and automatic telemetry. The manager can check water levels on an iPad from the homestead or even while in town. If a tank is low or a pump isn't working, it sends an alert. This means quicker response and less back and forth driving to distant wells just for routine checks. Of course, they still physically inspect and maintain all the equipment. You can't fix a burst pipe with an app. But the daily monitoring is hugely streamlined by technology. Drones are also starting to be used on some Australian stations for tasks like inspecting remote fences or finding stray cattle. Though it's not explicitly stated if Santa Gertrudis uses them yet, it's certainly an option on the table in the near future. Another aspect of modern management is data and planning. The station keeps records of rainfall at various points, though with an average annual rainfall of only 140 millimetres, 5.5 inches, some years nearly nothing falls at all. They track how the land responds to rain, which areas grow good feed, which areas are fragile. Sustainable grazing is not just a buzzword here, it's critical to the station's survival. The manager, Trevor Williams, Matthew's father, explained that knowing the land's carrying capacity and its sustainable threshold is vital. They adjust cattle numbers to match what the land can support in a given season, always thinking long term. The productivity per square kilometre out here is very low, so you need a lot of land to produce a decent number of cattle. On desert country like Anna Creek, you simply can't push the land too hard. If you overstock and overgraze, you'll ruin the fragile soil and plants, and it could take decades for it to recover. So they err on the side of caution, especially with looming droughts. One clever technique the Williams family uses to prevent overgrazing in one spot is strategic placement of waters and yards. By positioning watering points in underused areas, they can entice cattle to graze more evenly over the land instead of all congregating in one favoured flat. Cattle typically roam within a certain radius of water. They won't stray too far from a reliable drink. So if all the water sources are in one corner of a paddock, guess what? The cattle will overuse that area. By spreading water points out, the grazing pressure is distributed and the vegetation has a better chance to regenerate. It's a simple but effective range management strategy, honed by generations of experience and now backed by ecological understanding. In recent years, Anna Krieg's cattle have even been certified organic. This isn't too surprising when you consider their diet. These cattle eat only native grasses, saltbush and shrubs, and drink clean bore water. There are no feedlots, no chemical supplements, and certainly no herbicides or artificial fertilizers used on the vast natural pasture. In many ways, it's beef the way nature intended, slow-grown on wide-open range under some of the toughest conditions on Earth.
If there's one constant challenge at Anna Creek Station, it's the climate's caprice. The station lies in what's called the Lake Erie Basin, a region of mostly dry, flat desert that occasionally transforms after rain. Most years are dry, punctuated by the odd thunderstorm or modest rain that brings up a flush of green herbage which cattle and kangaroos alike relish. But every decade or two, big weather events can utterly change the scenery. When the northern monsoons send floodwaters down into South Australia, or a rare tropical low brings days of rain, the usually dry creeks flow and the vast salt lake of Lake Erie, just east of Anna Creek, fills up. In those times, parts of Anna Creek Station can look almost lush. Wildflowers bloom, grasses sprout from the Gibber Plains, and wetlands teem with waterbirds. Such burn times greatly increase the station's carrying capacity. After significant floods in 2010, Anna Creek restocked rapidly and grew its herd to around 10,000 head by 2011. By 2012, with continuing good conditions, it reached about 17,000 head of cattle, near the upper limit the land can support. Fat cattle and full water holes, that's the good side of the outback's boom and bust cycle. But then there's the bust side, drought. Drought is a recurring reality here, often stretching not just one year but several in a row. The early 2000s saw one of Australia's worst droughts on record, the Millennium Drought, and Anna Creek Station felt it acutely. By 2007, after years of scant rainfall, the vast station was carrying only about 1,500 cattle. To picture how low that is, recall it can run 16,000 plus in good times. Essentially, the station was almost destocked. In 2008, the then owners Kidman and Company made the hard decision to mothball Anna Creek's operations and destock completely if conditions didn't improve. Keeping even 1,500 cattle alive on a 23,000 square kilometre range was becoming impossible as nothing was growing and even the bore water is limited. Water in the Great Artesian Basin can be drawn indefinitely, but without rain, the cattle have no feed to eat. It was a near bankruptcy moment for the station and a low point in its history. Many long-time staff left as the work dried up along with the land. Then, as so often happens in Australia, nature flipped the script. In late 2009 and early 2010, the rains came back. Not just a drizzle, flooding rains. Water holes filled and the desert awakened. Anna Creek's fortunes turned almost overnight. The Kidman Company, which had been on the verge of closing the station, rushed to restock it. By May 2011, the property was back up to about 10,000 cattle and recovering. The big rains even filled Lake Erie for a time, drawing tourists to the region to see the spectacle of water in the desert. The following year, 2012, saw continued recovery and the herd reached up to 17,000 head by August. This boom-bust cycle is something the station managers know they must live with. In good seasons, they prepare for the next dry, maybe by spelling some paddocks or investing in more water points. In bad seasons, they cull herds early or transfer cattle to other properties, if possible, to protect the land from being stripped bare. It's a delicate balance, dictated largely by the skies. Interestingly, while drought is feared, floods can be double-edged too. A flood brings feed, but it can also strand cattle or isolate the homestead. Anna Creek Station has built protective levee banks around its homestead to guard against the rare but dangerous floods from Anna Creek swelling. Yes, in a really big rain event, the usually dry creek can turn into a torrent. These levees were built by the Williams family after they took over, proving the motto, "They don't do things by halves around here." The levees ensure that when the floodwaters come, the homestead and sheds stay high and dry, effectively turning the headquarters into a temporary island until waters recede. Between the extremes, the station also deals with everyday weather hardships, searing summer heat, where days above 45 degrees Celsius are not uncommon, and everything, humans, animals, machinery, is tested. Winter nights that can actually drop to near freezing, dust storms that roll off the Gibber Plains, and the ever-present isolation when something goes wrong. A vehicle breakdown on a remote track in midsummer, for example, is life-threatening if you're not prepared. There's stories in the area of people perishing of thirst within a day or two when caught unprepared. Station workers carry water and radios whenever they venture out for that reason. But by and large, the community on Anna Creek embraces these challenges as simply part of the life they've chosen. As the saying goes, if you can't handle the outback at its worst, you don't deserve it at its best. And the best can be stunning, like a dawn after rain, when the air is cool and clean, the desert is briefly green, and the lowing of well-fed cattle mixes with birdsong across the sunlit plains. Those are the moments that make the tough times worth it. Anna Creek Station's land isn't just home to cattle and people, it supports a range of wildlife adapted to the arid environment. In fact, sometimes the wildlife makes the cattle's life and the manager's jobs more complicated. Kangaroos, especially the big red kangaroos, thrive on the same pasture that cattle do. In good seasons, kangaroo populations boom and huge mobs of roos will converge on any area of fresh green feed or around water troughs. They can compete with livestock for feed and water. Of course, kangaroos are a native species and part of the natural ecosystem, so station managers must work around them. Controlled culling is sometimes done in droughts to reduce suffering when there's not enough feed for all, but generally roos are accepted as part of the backdrop. Tourists might imagine the outback with a kangaroo under every tree. The reality is they're often scattered sparsely, but at times you might indeed see dozens hopping across the flats in early morning or late afternoon. Emus are another iconic resident. These large flightless birds wander the station in small groups, pecking for seeds and insects. They too need water every so often, and it's not uncommon to find emus sharing a cattle trough or pecking around a bore drain. Dingoes, the wild dogs that once plagued the sheep flocks, still roam the outback. Anna Creek lies north of the Great Dingo Fence, a 5,600 kilometre fence that cuts across South A to keep dingoes out of the sheep country in the south. So dingoes are present in the area. For cattle, dingoes are less of a threat. They generally won't attack healthy grown cattle, though calves or weak animals could be at risk. The station's switch to cattle back in the 1860s was largely to get away from dingo predation, and it proved wise. Today, station managers keep an eye on dingo numbers. If they increase, they might bait or shoot to control them, especially if the dingoes start hanging around cattle too much. But many times dingoes subsist on rabbits, kangaroo carcasses and smaller critters and don't cause huge trouble to cattle. At night, their howls can often be heard, reminding everyone that this is still a wild land. There are also feral animals present as a legacy of earlier times. Wild donkeys and horses might be encountered, though not in large mobs like in the Northern Territory. Here, just the odd one or two that have strayed or been left. Kerrell camels, descendants of those camel teams from long ago, roam parts of the outback as well. South Australia's far north has quite a few camels. They aren't often seen near homesteads, but they might appear at a distant waterhole. Camels can be destructive, fouling water sources and knocking down fences, so they're not exactly welcomed. There are periodic culling programs for feral camels across the outback, including around the Lake Erie region. On a gentler note, the station is also home to myriad smaller creatures. Lizards like goannas and bearded dragons, Snakes. Yes, several types of venomous snakes are around, including king browns and mulga snakes. Caution is a way of life. And an array of birds, from wedge-tailed eagles to tiny zebra finches. Wedge-tailed eagles, Australia's largest bird of prey, often soar above the plains and build huge stick nests in the sparse trees or telegraph poles. They are opportunists. After a cattle muster, you'll see them swooping down to feed on any afterbirth or carcasses left behind. One cyclist visiting Anna Creek noted seeing a wedge-tail nest on a transmission tower with a great view over the flat land. At waterholes, especially when ephemeral lakes fill, you can see water birds like ducks, pelicans. If Lake Eyre has water, pelicans famously appear there in droves from thousands of kilometres away. And brolgas, a type of crane that dances in the wetlands. These moments of teeming birdlife are magical in a place that is usually so dry and quiet. The landscape of Anna Creek Station is classic outback desert. Much of it is characterised by gibber plains, flat or gently undulating terrain covered with pebbles of ironstone or gibbers that gleam reddish-brown in the sun. Very tough salt-tolerant grasses and low shrubs like saltbush and samphire grow in pockets across these plains. Then there are sand dune country sections, parallel dunes of red sand, often fixed in place by hardy spinifex grass. These dunes can be dozens of kilometres long and a few metres high, with interdunal swales between them that sometimes catch water. In those swales and around clay pans, you'll find mulga scrub or acacia bushes. Additionally, Anna Creek has areas described as swamps or floodouts, basically low-lying patches that act as natural reservoirs when heavy rain comes. They can be dry salt pans for years, then become temporary wetlands after a downpour. One visually stunning feature on the station is the Painted Hills, a section of vividly coloured eroded sandstone mounds and cliffs revealing bands of orange, red, yellow and white clays. These hills are part of the same geological formation as the famed Painted Desert nearby. For a long time, the Painted Hills on Anna Creek were known only to station locals and a few pilots, but recently the Williams family has allowed limited tourist access via scenic flights. No roads reach them. It's a reminder that this land holds not just cattle, but natural beauty and geological wonder. In fact, Anna Creek Station sits above rich geology. It's on the edge of the Great Artesian Basin and near the ancient Arkaringa Basin, which is rich in minerals and hydrocarbons. More on that shortly. The station's soil and vegetation may seem sparse, but it's a finely balanced ecology that has sustained pastoral use for over 150 years now, largely because those managing it learned to work with the land's limits, not against them. Environmentally, the station's owners partake in regional conservation efforts too. They coordinate with the Pastoral Board and environmental agencies to manage issues like soil erosion, pest control, for example keeping an eye on feral rabbit or camel populations, and preserving any sites of cultural significance. On Anna Creek are also found some historical ruins, not just the telegraph stations mentioned, but also old cattle yards, pioneer graves and even an abandoned copper mine at the Peak, dating back to the 19th century. These are protected as heritage, and the station works with authorities to ensure they're not disturbed by cattle or development. Such features add to the ecological tapestry. For instance, old mines might form artificial waterholes that wildlife now use. While cattle are the lifeblood of Anna Creek Station, the land beneath the station has long teased explorers with the possibility of mineral and energy riches. This part of South Australia is known for minerals. Just south of Anna Creek is the famous Olympic Dam mine, one of the world's largest deposits of uranium, copper and gold. To the northwest lies Coober Pedy, where opal was discovered in 1915, spawning a century of opal mining and the quirky underground town that exists today. Anna Creek Station itself has some opal diggings on its margins and various small mineral occurrences, though nothing like a major mine on the station, which is a good thing from the pastoral perspective. The big story in recent years, however, has been oil, or specifically shale oil. In 2013, a Brisbane-based company announced that the geological formation under and around Anna Creek, the Akaringa Basin, could contain a massive shale oil deposit. They'd been drilling exploration wells on parts of the station and around Coober Pedy, and based on surveys, they estimated there might be 233 billion barrels of oil in the shale rock. Yes, billion with a B, a mind-boggling figure that grabbed headlines worldwide. Media outlets breathlessly reported a potential $20 trillion oil find in South Australia's outback, comparing it to Saudi Arabia's oil bounty. If even a fraction of that oil could be extracted, it could make Australia a net oil exporter and bring a boom to this very remote region. However, there's a big gap between finding oil in the ground and getting it out profitably, especially shale oil, which is trapped in rock and requires complex, costly extraction. Think along the lines of fracking technology. The company, Link Energy, eventually went into administration, and the grand plans have yet to materialise. As of now, no commercial oil production has commenced in Anna Creek Station. The exploration did confirm that the rocks are rich in oil and gas-prone kerogen, but the venture needed huge investment and technological proofs which haven't come through. So the red dirt of Anna Creek remains mostly the domain of cattle, not oil rigs, at least for the present. From the station's perspective, such finds are a double-edged sword. On one hand, having a huge oil reserve could mean royalties or compensation if extraction ever happened on their land. On the other hand, mining or drilling activity can disrupt pastoral operations and the landscape. It's worth noting that Anna Creek Station already coexists with some non-pastoral uses. A portion of the station overlaps with the Woomera Prohibited Area, a vast military weapons testing range. This was actually a key reason why the Australian government was cautious about foreign buyers taking over Anna Creek in 2016. More on that soon. The station's airspace sometimes sees rockets or test missiles soaring overhead from Woomera, a reminder that this empty land is valued for defence purposes too. Additionally, when the prominent Hill copper gold mine was developed not far from Anna Creek, the station cooperated in allowing infrastructure such as access roads or pipelines. In general, outback stations like Anna Creek find ways to work with miners or exploration companies through negotiated land access agreements. But the priority is always to protect the station's water and grazing, so the cattle come first. For instance, any mining company would have to ensure their activities don't deplete the underground water that the station's bores rely on, and they must rehabilitate any land they disturb. In summary, Anna Creek Station sits on top of potential mineral wealth, from opals to possibly significant oil and gas. Yet its true wealth for over a century has been above ground, the grass, the water and the cattle. Those things have kept the station running and will likely continue to do so for the foreseeable future. Still, it's intriguing to think that beneath the hooves of those wandering Santa Gertrudis herds might lie a fortune in oil shale or other resources. Time will tell whether that ever changes the face of Anna Creek. For now, the station remains an outback cattle domain, with the drilling rigs at bay and the horizon unbroken by oil wells.
By the 2010s, Anna Creek Station had been in operation for around 150 years, an impressive feat of endurance. However, big changes were afoot in its ownership. Kidman & Co., the historic company that owned Anna Creek and many other stations, decided to sell its holdings. In 2015-2016, a high-profile bidding war and national debate took place over the Kidman empire. Initially, foreign investors, mainly from China, sought to buy the entire portfolio, including Anna Creek. This raised concern in the Australian government, partly because Anna Creek's land intersects the sensitive Woomera weapons testing area. In April 2016, Australia's Treasurer blocked the sale of Anna Creek to a foreign consortium, citing national interest. The solution was to split Anna Creek off from the rest of Kidman & Co. Into the Williams family, local pastoralists from South Australia. The Williams owned several neighbouring cattle stations and were keen to add Anna Creek to their operations. In December 2016, the Williams Cattle Company officially acquired Anna Creek Station and its outstation, The Peak, from Kidman & Co. This move kept the world's largest cattle station in Australian hands, a point that was widely welcomed by the local community and government. The Williams family, led by patriarch Trevor Williams and his son Matthew, now the station manager, were thrilled. They saw it as the culmination of a dream, even dedicating the purchase to Trevor's late father, who had started their cattle business decades earlier in the same region.
The sale, reportedly around $16 million for the land, stock and equipment not included, set a record for the district. The Williamses bid aggressively to ensure they got it. They knew opportunities to buy a property like this are exceedingly rare. At the time of handover, Anna Creek had relatively few cattle on it. Kidman Co. had not fully restocked after the drought. But the Williams family had 8,000 head of their own cattle ready to move in and utilise the wide open spaces. In effect, they were ideally positioned to take over. They had cattle numbers and experience in the exact type of country. Since 2016, under Williams' ownership, Anna Creek Station has been gearing up and modernising. The new owners quickly announced big plans to invest in the property. They set about sinking new bores or waters, building new dams and trucking yards and upgrading fences, all to boost the station's carrying capacity and make it more efficient. This included the innovations we discussed earlier, like remote water monitoring, and continuing the sustainable grazing strategies. By around 2020, the station herd was stabilised at roughly 9,000 to 10,000 cattle, with the goal to increase that closer to the 16,000 head mark in good seasons. The number of employees has remained lean, typically about 11 people in total, as noted. It's astonishing, but as one article highlighted, just 11 people run the whole of Anna Creek Station nowadays. Those 11 wear many hats, as we've seen, and they exemplify the incredible productivity made possible by modern techniques in tandem with old-fashioned hard yakka, or hard work.
The cattle from Anna Creek today contribute to Australia's beef export industry, often going to feedlots or processors that supply beef to Asia and other global markets. Free-range, organic certified outback beef has a certain cachet, and the Williams are capitalising on that by keeping their operations top-notch. They also keep an eye on diversification. While cattle are king, they know tourism and other uses can provide side income. As mentioned, they've opened up the picturesque corners like the Painted Hills to scenic flight tourism in partnership with local operators, and the historic sites on the station add to the cultural tourism appeal of the Udnadatta track route. Importantly, the Williams family are locals. They've lived in this country for generations, and fellow graziers in the region respect them. When they took over Anna Creek, industry leaders praised the move. Having a family born and bred in that country means they know and understand it and can run it in tune with the environment. This sentiment, expressed by Livestock SA and neighbouring pastoralists, underlines a key idea. Outback stations are not just businesses, they're also custodians of the land. The hope is that under the Williams stewardship, Anna Creek will continue to thrive and perhaps even improve after the somewhat neglectful drought years at the end of Kidman's tenure. Early signs are positive. The station has seen infrastructure upgrades and, when seasons allow, more cattle on the paddocks. Looking to the future, Anna Creek Station faces many of the same issues as all outback properties. Climate variability, climate change models suggest even more erratic rainfall ahead, which could mean even tougher droughts punctuated by intense floods, market fluctuations in beef prices, and the ongoing need to attract and retain skilled labour who are willing to live in remote areas. There's also the question of succession. Fortunately, the Williams clan is large, with younger members coming through to gradually take the reins. Matthew Williams, the current manager, is one of the younger generation actively running things on site, while his parents oversee their multiple properties from their home base at Nilpena Station nearby. Another factor is technology. We might see solar-powered desalination for water, more extensive use of drones for mustering or monitoring, and even automation in some tasks, perhaps remote-controlled gates or automated feeding stations as the next wave of innovation. But one suspects that no matter how high-tech things get, life on Anna Creek will still involve getting your boots dirty and contending with Mother Nature on a very fundamental level. Finally, it's worth reflecting on what Anna Creek Station represents in the Australian psyche. It's an almost mythical place when people rattle off outback facts. Did you know the biggest cattle station in the world is in Australia? It's bigger than insert country or state here.
Indeed, Anna Creek, at around 5.8 million acres, is often compared to the size of Belgium, and it dwarfs even the largest ranches in Texas by a factor of 7 or more. This sheer scale captures the imagination. But those who live and work here know that beyond the statistics, it's the daily realities and the history that make it special. Generations of families, European settler and Aboriginal alike, have called Anna Creek home. Each left their mark, whether in stock roots worn into the earth, or lonely graves on the gibber plains, or knowledge passed down of where the clay pans hold water longest after rain. Today, Anna Creek Station stands as a living link between Australia's pioneering past and its innovative present. The station's story is still unfolding, day by day, as stockmen ride out or rev up their bikes, as calves are born and markets fluctuate, as droughts come and go, and as the desert sun rises and sets over the endless horizon. Life on the world's largest cattle station is challenging, no doubt, but it's also rewarding in ways that are hard to measure. It's about freedom, self-reliance, and being tuned to the land. As we conclude our journey through Anna Creek Station saga, imagine standing at the homestead at dusk. The sky is a blaze of orange and purple. The heat of the day is easing off. You might hear the faint low of a cow from somewhere far out, or the flutter of galas settling in at a gum tree for the night. The station generator hums, and the smells of dinner waft from the cookhouse. In this moment of stillness, you appreciate the incredible enterprise that's taking place here. A handful of people running a property bigger than some cities, producing food for thousands of people, all the while respecting the ancient land under their boots. This is life on Anna Creek Station, a testament to the Australian outback spirit, past and present, and it's a ripper of a story that continues to evolve under those vast, starry skies.